want to shift a little from the language to the folks who write in it, especially in India. That is the role of the writer in Indian society, particularly in the present time. The writer as a public figure, the writer as an entertainer, as a celebrity, as a provoker, as one who inspires, one that confounds the reader. Writer as activist, writer as conscience. How do you understand? You have some experience with this. How do you understand the role of the writer?
All of that is really Arundhati Roy.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of others, actually, because I have the sense, slightly depressing sense, that writers are not particularly listened to in India anymore. I don't think anybody gives it. I'm sure we'll get round to talking about what's happening with Wendy Doniger and so on, but I think it's an aspect of that nobody cares about these things except a small group. And even that small group is very conflicted and ambiguous about the way in which it deals with it. So I think there's been a great loss of literary influence in India. There are figures, clearly who have some stature, like Arundhati, like Vikram Seth, and some journalists who've been very prominent for a long time and who have a kind of prominence, a kind of voice because of that. And it's good to see that those people do use that position in order to, to use the platform in order to say things that need to be said. And I just worry that not that many people are listening anymore. Not that unlike America. There's a great line in Italo Calvino's novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveller. Oh, you can't hear? All right, how about that? Is that better? All right. In Calvino's novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveller, there's a moment where one of the characters says to another, you can always tell how highly a country values literature by the size of the apparatus it sets up to control it. And by that standard, the Soviet Union valued literature very highly, and the United States not so much. And I think that's probably true.
Yeah,
that the way in which writers and intellectuals were effective in opposing Soviet communism, spoke to the great regard that people had for Solzhenitsyn and so on. Here, I have the feeling that nobody's that interested. In Europe, it goes up and down. In India, I have the sense that people aren't that interested anymore. The casualness, of the attacks on the arts in India now, and the kind of broad acceptance, or let's say the inertia of the mass of the public to the fact that these things are being done. It arouses very little outrage, very little commentary. There's a kind of assumption that if you've got yourself banned, it's your fault because you did something you shouldn't have. It's very damaging. I think the Indian culture is, I was in India last year when the film of Midnight's Children came out there, and I said something which I think is true, that the Midnight's Children at its climax deals with the emergency period, and of course that was a political emergency.
Right.
And what I said is that now I think India is in the middle of a cultural emergency, and that the levels of repression in the cultural area, should worry us as much as the political repressions of the mid-70s emergency.